Clear the doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President,
All right, this morning we are pleased to have the Bishop Joel Njuko from the City of David Tabernacle in Beltsville, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from District 21. Members, please rise for the invocation.
Our Father God in heaven, the maker of heaven and earth, and all that is in it, hallowed be your name. We humbly come before you because you are the source of life, and everything good comes from you. This day I bring to your holy presence the Senate section of the great state of Maryland. I pray for these great senators. Bless them and their families. Keep them healthy and grant them the wisdom and fortitude in all deliberations to make right decisions that will positively impact the citizens to flourish and prosper graciously in every area of their lives. I pray for the governor, his lieutenant, the cabinet, and the Senate president. Bless them and their families also. Help them to rule with clarity and understanding of the need of the people of this state. Mighty God, this great state of Maryland and the entire United States of America have been ravished and spoiled by this evil pandemic outbreak called COVID-19, which has plagued the entire globe. Many lives have been lost, jobs lost, many families are grieving, some in crisis, and others are very fearful, not knowing what the future holds. Dear Lord our God, I ask for your healing power to heal and comfort those that are mourning even right now. Remove this evil from our land and let your blessings flow again and hope restored. We shall continue to pray for all the health care workers, first responders, and our military personnel for their relentless efforts to rescue those whose lives are in danger. Bless them and their families. Also, keep them safe, my God. Finally, let love, joy, peace, and your goodness reign in this great state, my Father. This and more we pray in your holy name. Amen. God bless this great state of Maryland. God bless America.
Amen. All right, it appears we are waiting for the senator from the 21st district, who is joining us, and I think from remotely maybe heard the invocation and potentially would like to journalize the bishop's remarks. The chair recognizes the senator from District 21.
Thank you very much. Several colleagues of mine absolutely heard the entire prayer. It was so robustly delivered, and I want to ask the body to journalize the remarks.
Without objection, certainly we will journalize the bishop's invocation this morning. All right, has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? Just double check, senators. It appears senator from the 21st district. All right, the clerk will take the call. With 44 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now again in session. All right, senators, we are coming out of a recess, but we do have some rules committees and some processing bills here. I believe we also have maybe a resolution today. Do we have a resolution? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Senator from the 27th district. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's my great privilege to welcome the Cross family of R&D Cross from Brandywine, a family that originated there in the mid-1800s, to join us virtually this morning. It's been a great honor to get to know the family over the past 20-plus years. The world is a small place, members. My wife and I built our home on a portion of their farm in Brandywine, so I'm right around the corner from that family and their their business. It's an institution in Southern Maryland. Their business, R&D Cross, has served Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. with farm and garden products since 1927. That's about 94 years of service. Their honesty, integrity, and success caused them to be chosen this year as a member of the 2021 class of the Governor's inaugural, Agriculture Hall of Fame. We're very proud of them. I've asked that they be recognized with a Senate resolution to commemorate this outstanding honor. And Mr. President and members, I'd ask that the resolution be read in full. Good morning.
Thank you, Senator. The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Cross family in recognition of your induction to the Governor's Agriculture Hall of Fame. Congratulations on the outstanding recognition and more than 90 years of service to Southern Maryland. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented on this 10th day of March 2021.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 44 votes in the affirmative, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates the Cross family for your remarkable representation of this wonderful state and our agricultural history, 90 years strong. We are so thankful for your contributions, and we honor you and all of the work that you've done. We're so pleased that you could be with us today. Although virtually, we wish you were here with us in person, but this will do as in the midst of the pandemic. So thank you so much, and we congratulate you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Senator, for bringing the Cross family here with us virtually.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all. All right. Joys of technology, huh? Find a way to make it work. All right, let's see. Just a quick note. I'm sure many folks saw the governor's announcement yesterday with the reopenings that are planned for the 12th. I think, there's certainly reasonable people will disagree whether or not it was too fast or fast enough. I think there were some it's a little bit faster than maybe some folks would have thought. However, I do think it's really important and do want to reiterate, I think that the governor's executive order that maintains the mask requirements and the distancing requirements are absolutely essential. I think that's going to be the key for us to get through this because we know that it's the simple stuff, it's the smaller stuff, it's the everyday habits of washing hands, wearing masks, doing the things. That is the single most important thing we can do to get through this as vaccines get distributed. There is a slight note that I want to make. There seems to have been, at least over the last 12 hours, a bit of confusion from some of our local jurisdictions as to what authority they have under the new executive order. We've reached out to the attorney generals to try and get some guidance. We've reached out to the governor's office. I think the sooner we can clear up this question about local discretion when it comes to handling outbreaks, the better. Hopefully there can be some efficient and quick work so that executives know, our county commissions and executives know that if there's an issue in the community that they have the tools necessary to contain it. And so hopefully we'll see in the next 24 hours some more certainty and clarity there, because we're all in this thing together, and if we're all on the same page, I think we get through it a lot more effectively. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from District 21.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for your work on this and your comments today. As a representative of Prince George's County, which has been one of the epicenters of the dangers from the virus, and the county with the lowest percentage of our citizens vaccinated, it is, I think I should speak on behalf of my colleagues in Prince George's County, that it's extremely important that the county does have the flexibility to protect our own people. So I appreciate your efforts on this, and any way we can help you, we'd be happy to.
Thank you, Senator. And the good news is nothing happens until the 12th, so there is time to get some clarity, and the sooner we get that clarity, the better for everyone. All right, any other comments, announcements before we jump into things today? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Hartford, Baltimore counties.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to get up and take a moment. We heard the news last night that former Governor Bob Ehrlich's father passed away, Bob Ehrlich Sr. He was somebody I knew very well personally back in the 90s when I was on the governor's campaigns for Congress. One of my jobs was to drive seniors, we called them, around. He and I got very close. In fact, one day, a guy from Arbutus was on my farm with me when I had to deliver a calf, and he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I named the calf after him, Senior, and I had it for 20 years. Every time I'd see him, he'd ask me about it. I gave him a picture, and at their home in Arbutus, he actually had a picture of that cow. He was so proud of it. But Senior was an incredible man. He was in the Korean War. There's actually a point-to-point race in Baltimore County that's named after somebody that he helped rescue in a mission. He was one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He truly was a genuine, down-to-earth person. It was kind of sad, to hear he passed. He was 90 years old. But I just want to take a moment and remember him and ask that we adjourn in his honor, because Governor Ehrlich was a good man with what he's done, but his father was incredible and a great man. So I just ask that we adjourn in his honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing that to our attention. I had not heard that. That is sad news, and our deepest condolences are extended to the entire Ehrlich family. It's always tough to lose a parent, and we'll certainly adjourn in his honor, and we'll make sure that we send that the Senate is well represented. We'll make sure that we have the information, and we'll pass it along to folks that we extend our sincerest condolences. I'm sure he was a man who lived a proud life, having raised a son who was governor. It's a testament to his work in parenting, and so Maryland is better off for him having been here. All right. Any other announcements? Yes, Senator from the Middle Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much. And I guess point of personal privilege, I just wanted to say this is Women's History Month, as you know. And President Ferguson, we appreciate your participation with the Women's Veterans Celebration that's going on today. It was quite an honor and quite a thrill. As many of you know, there's a wonderful lady who's about 103 who's served, and she filmed her skydive last year that she took, which was pretty amazing, right here in Maryland. So just thank a veteran today, if you will, particularly our women veterans, and thank you for, again, your participation in that with the third annual Women Legislators Celebration of our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator, and we are very, very thankful that the Women's Caucus has been so attentive to women veterans. It's unfortunately a segment of our veteran community that has been underappreciated, and I think the specialized needs are important, and certainly the caucus has done a great job highlighting those. When we sign up for that skydiving together, let me know. 103, it's incredible. All right, any other announcements before we jump in? All right, if not, we've got a report from the Committee on the Rules Committee. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 948, Senator Klossmeyer, Veterans Affairs, Office of Communication and Public Affairs, Veterans Advocacy and Education Act.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. The Chairwoman of the Rules Committee, these are all approved by the Senate Rules Committee to be referred.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Rules Committee did meet, and all of the bills except for one have received a favorable response.
And all the ones on the, okay, excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. All the ones on the list will be referred to the appropriate standing committees. All right. We've got a re-referral. This is calendar number 10, re-referrals. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 917, Senator Hester, Department of Information Technology, Status of Information Technology and Cybersecurity in State and Local Agencies, re-referred to Education, Health, and Environment.
All right, without objection, the bill will be moved from Budget and Taxation to Education, Health, and the Environment. We also have a executive nominations report. Clerk will read the report.
Report number 5, the Senate Executive Nominations Committee reports favorably on the attached gubernatorial appointments and recommends that the Senate of Maryland advise and consent to these appointments. Ronald N. Young, Chair.
Chair recognizes Chair of the Executive Nominations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate accept report number 5 of the Senate Executive Nominations Committee in open session, and that we special order the report until Friday the 12th.
The chair has moved that we special order, hear the report in open session and special order it until the appropriate time on Friday if there are no objections, so ordered. We will now come back into where we left off before our recess from unfinished business. So we're going to jump into this late over calendar number 10. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 414, Senator Pinsky, Climate Solutions Now Act of 2021. Question is on the adoption of the amendments offered from the floor by Senator Huff.
All right. So, senators, the question before the body right now is the amendment moved and offered by the minority whip. Senator, does the senator want to explain the amendment just to remind folks?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. What this amendment does, and just to rehash briefly, I know there's other amendments behind me. Yesterday, the argument that you heard repeatedly on this side is about this bill and then the other bill, and that you're removing $35 million from the Bay Restoration Fund for programs that are for the sewer and septic upgrades. And what this would do would take half of that money out of the Bay Restoration Fund for the tree planting program, and the other half would come out of the general fund to preserve that. And the reason why we want to preserve it, and again, just to rehash, yesterday I talked about infrastructure, and there was some argument, is this program really infrastructure? Well, when you look at the projects and the submissions, many of which, quite frankly, did not go forward because there wasn't even enough money in the current pot, you'll see constantly through there small towns throughout, rural parts of the state, towns that many times their budget in total might be $2 million, $3 million, asking to fix clay sewer pipes, sewer main lines, pumps, broken pumps. These are directly pulled from the list. And most of these projects are $500,000 to maybe $3 million at most. These are not huge projects. But getting back into reiterating my point yesterday, there was some debate over the public health portion of this. How does it affect public health? Well, I'll explain. So in a lot of these small towns, what happens is when you have problems with your sewage, so if you get a hard rain and your sewer can't handle the capacity, that sewage water goes over into the river. And then you get what's called a boil water advisory. And this happens constantly in small towns. And so there's your public health portion of it. And so yesterday I was not, as the chair, and I did not mean to say the chair, belittling a tree program. I just think there's a priority. There's a priority of public health, but also for the environment. That when we don't fix these pipes, when we don't fix these sewer lines, these pumps, these things like that, that sewer sludge and raw sewage, hundreds, you'll see it, the releases, thousands of gallons of it will go right into the river. By me, I live right on the Potomac River. So if we have an overflow, it goes right into the river. So I think it's, for the environment, for public health, it's important that we maintain funding for these important projects I just listed off. These are projects that are directly from submissions. This is infrastructure. These are pipes, these are pumps, sewer main lines. These are critical projects. And I think an important priority is we should not take money away from that for another project, even though well-intentioned, a good project, something that is directly affecting a direct, immediate impact on the environment, public health.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise to urge the body to vote red on the amendment. You know, I did some homework last night or this morning after listening to the chair of Budget and Tax talking about the other bill, which has also been criticized for diverting money. And I found out that the original bill in 2017 that diverted $10 million was introduced by the governor of the state of Maryland. Not by the chair of Budget and Tax, not by me, by the governor of the state of Maryland, who diverted $10 million. And let me give you an example of some of the projects that are paid for. Restoring a degraded stream. I think that's valuable. The governor thought it was valuable. MDE thought it was valuable. It was not a septic connection. Howard County automated control of online factors. I don't. It's a little more technical than I know, but it was an automated system. So the fact is, what's happening here with the 414 before us and the next bill is not unique or not new.
The governor of the state of Maryland has done the same thing. I would also say this, and why I recommend a red vote. If the maker of the motion believes there should be more money going to some of these small towns because it's not getting funded, I would urge them to make the request to the governor and put it in the budget for next year. I will support it. But to say this money, which in most cases doesn't get funded, 3/4 of the requests don't get funded, either because they aren't cost efficient or there's not enough money. So for those reasons, Mr. President, I would urge a red vote.
All right, questions on the amendment? On the amendment, any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
I'll just briefly respond too, and I actually would thank the governor because the town that I talked about yesterday that had the brown water issue, the governor did put $1 million in the capital budget for that town. So the governor has been helpful, but there's only so much money to go around, and so here we're taking another pot of money to help these small towns.
All right, question on the amendment. On the amendment, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Senators requested a roll call vote. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 5.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have an amendment, and I had sent it to the floor leader via email. I don't know if a paper copy was also submitted.
Senator, do you have the number?
Yes, I'd be glad to. The amendment number is amendment number 413921/1.
21/1. Okay, excellent. Just give us one moment.
Sure.
All right, there it goes. Senator may explain the amendment.
Okay, and so thank you, Mr. President. So we've had an extensive debate about the fund and rating funds from the Bay Restoration Fund to divert to this bill and to the projects in this bill, and obviously the body's rejected the amendments we've offered on trying to stop that from happening or mitigate it. But I think this amendment is actually one that it's a fair one because it's what we're trying to do with this amendment would simply say that we would like the department to list all of the applications by district for the Bay Restoration Fund. We would like the department to produce have a list of applications by district, have the status of each application, and also how is that application affected by this new program, or is the new program taking the place of or jumping the line on these applications? It's really a simple reporting amendment, just to say we would like, and the amendment literally reads the department shall publicly disclose on the department's website. Because we had a little trouble finding information. There was a listing of projects, but there's not a lot of public information on what's applied for and maybe what's waiting to get into the pipeline. And our concern is not so much about the next, obviously there's been an amendment about the next year. Our concern is not even so much for the things that are currently being funded or are even right about to start and are in planning. It's the ones that are waiting to get word, the ones that are applying, and ones in the future that would apply in some of the communities and the towns that we've talked about. So this amendment just says each wastewater treatment plant project application should be listed by district, the status of each application, any project delays due to tree planting programs. And so, Mr. President, I would move the amendment and ask for the body's support just for some transparency so that we can track how this is being impacted. Thank you.
Senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yeah, Mr. President, I agree with it, but the fact is it's already in statute and it's also in this bill. If you would look on page 47, lines 29 to 31, it says after funding any eligible costs identified under item 4, 1 and 2 of this paragraph. Now, obviously when you have a site, it's sometimes hard to track down. So this bill explicitly prohibits that. Wastewater treatment plants, major and minor, come first. And it's also under the existing law, I believe, that we're trying to renew with the companion, I hate to call it, it's like a companion bill that's being sponsored by the chair of Budget and Tax. So We're already doing this. This adds an unnecessary step, so I'd urge a red vote. And it is prohibited by law and will continue to be prohibited by law.
Can you, sir, could the chairman explain that prohibited by law and that the money for the trees will not go in front of the wastewater?
Correct.
Got it. All right. Any senators who have not yet spoken? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from District 34.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader could yield for a question on.
Will the floor leader yield? Appears so. Senator may
Sure.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Floor. Chairman, what you just said caused me a little confusion. So do I understand it then that under this bill that the major projects could not be, the funding of those could not be impacted? It's the smaller projects that could be impacted?
No, major or minor.
Maybe you just misspoke. You said these major projects would not. You just misspoke. It's any project could not be delayed.
Major, minor wastewater treatment plants clearly come first. This cannot be spent until after that.
Okay,
and
so,
actually, yeah.
So wastewater treatment plants. But that would not apply then to repairing lines and other sorts of smaller projects. Those could be delayed. It's just the major water treatment plants that would not be delayed.
Right. I mean, that's been the debate we've been having for the last hour and a half collectively. It does not guarantee, because currently all projects are not guaranteed. As I said, I think there were 39 totaling $207 million last year, and they only did 57 of them. But again, when it comes to major and minor, which has the best return on investment, this comes afterwards. So this amendment speaks to wastewater treatment plants. It's already in the law, and it's also reiterated in this bill.
All right, thank you. If I could just briefly on the
amendment. Senator may proceed.
We keep hearing references to the small towns, the podunks of the state. But I would just remind the body that if you want to, if you walk around the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, it's always interesting to me that you get long about July when it's really dry out, and you can see down in the harbor like 10, 15 feet. It's amazing. You can look way down in there. It actually clears up because no water has gone into the Inner Harbor. But you get anything more than a light sprinkle, suddenly you can't see anything, and you see garbage floating. These are the sort of projects where we've got stormwater intrusion into the sanitary sewer pipes. We've got and vice versa, that are really adding a substantial amount of nutrients to the bay and just causing general unsightliness and degrading the potential of these waterways. And I just hope that we continue to stay focused on that, because it's not just the major water and sewer treatment plants. It's the 10,000s, the 100,000s of small point sources of pollution. And we've done very well in throughout the state in treating this with those many micro intrusions and solving them one at a time. But it's going to require consistent, for many more decades, of close attention and not letting our eyes off the ball to continue to make those kind of improvements. And I think it's a mistake anything we do to in any way suggest that this is a time, or any time is a time, to let up the throttle on these many small projects. Because I've seen personally in streams, smaller streams, that don't lie on a major water treatment plant, how they've been improved over the decades by the state's steady investment in improving or removing these point sources of sewage treatment, septic systems flowing over, farm systems flowing over, and the like. And I just think it's a mistake at any time that we let up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from District 38.
Thank you, Mr. President. My colleagues, I'll be brief. I rise in support of this amendment, and the reason I do is I'm actually hearing from municipalities and the counties on how the tree planting program, the funding of that's going to affect their projects since we're taking the funding out of the Bay Restoration Fund. So I initially let them know we were trying to work on another funding source through the through general funds as opposed to the Bay Restoration funds. Since we have not been able to move forward with that, I'm getting questions on what it will mean as far as their projects in the future. So this amendment is just transparency. It does make it easier for them to follow the process, and especially the part that makes clear that any project delays due to the tree planting program. Again, this is not a question about supporting the tree planting program. It's a question about the funding source. And since we did not go forward to find another funding source through the general funds, that this amendment just seems common sense, transparency, to give our municipalities and counties some guidance, make it clearer for them to follow the process. So I would urge a yes vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I think the debate has been illuminating to sort of understand both where the floor leader is coming from and also what this amendment is trying to accomplish. Let's just be very clear. The amendment talks about getting a report on both wastewater projects, but also any of the other projects that would normally be under the Bay Restoration Fund. And I think even though I'm reading in the bill where it talks about how you can't preempt any of the funding, but again, having a report that makes it very clear what projects are currently in the application stage, and if anything was preempted, even something lesser than a wastewater treatment plant would all be helpful. But it really would be helpful just to know what projects are out there so that it's publicly available on the web, so we can know what's happening in our district, what applications are going in. We all try to stay up with our municipalities and our counties, but there are times that something could be proposed that we didn't know about, so it's helpful for that purpose, helpful to know if there's any risk of something being preempted or being slowed down even. Because sometimes we could say, oh, it's not being preempted, it's being slowed down. So I think this amendment is very, very good because of the transparency it would provide. But I also thought I would just mention that as I read through the bill yesterday, preparing this amendment, this is not the only place in the bill where we would be requiring some sort of reporting. There on page 9, there's a report required that's going to be available to us and to the public about net zero schools. On page 14, there is a report that will be available about methane emission and discrepancies with landfills and how they measure it versus how the state and the Climate Commission would measure it. On page 22, there is a Just Transition Employment and Returning Work Group report that will be due. On page 32, there is a program about replacing the car fleet, the passenger car fleet the state has, with zero-emission vehicles. And then on page 38, there's the same reporting due for buses, replacing the buses. So we literally have several reports here. One of the main things about this bill, though, is substituting, is pulling money out of the Bay Restoration Fund and other funds to supplement the tree program. I think it would be only natural to say, let's have a report that makes it very clear what we're doing and gives people information. I don't think it's an unreasonable amendment, so I would ask for the body to join me in supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Just did a quick Google search, and the Bay Restoration Fund annual status report does pop right up. So there is an annual report that shows all the projects.
Mr. President, if I may respond to that, there's not a report that pops right up that shows what applications are being requested. There's a report for what projects are being funded and what projects are under design, and that's good. But there's not a report that goes further to say what projects are potentially in the pipeline or being requested. So that's part of the reason for the amendment.
Understood. All right, question on the amendment. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. Senators requested a roll call vote. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 29.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment.
Senator, could the senator please read the number?
763-123
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, give us one moment. There we go. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, this amendment adds paratransit to the exemptions in this bill. This is a very simple but very extremely important amendment. According to DBM and MDOT, there are significant concerns about the capabilities and the inabilities when it comes to paratransit services and state-owned vehicles. Right now, the battery life and other specifications of electric zero-emission passenger cars cannot match the demand of paratransit services. While MDOT is open to transitioning these vehicles to zero emission as soon as practical, the technology does not work with the MTA's needs right now. Additionally, the Americans with Disabilities Act established paratransit for state agencies. By not meeting the state's paratransit needs, we could be putting ourselves at risk for a violation of the ADA. Mobility Link, which is state-owned, state-operated vehicles, is a specialized transit service available to people who, because of a disability, are functionally unable to get to a bus stop. They can't wait unassisted at a stop or a station or board or ride a bus or train by themselves. Mobility Link is a shared ride service offered from the first exterior door of a person's home or pickup location to the first exterior door of their destination. Currently, there are 110 vehicles utilized and run by Mobility Link. I would ask that you accept and support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yeah, Mr. President, we think this is a clarifying amendment. We accept it as a friendly amendment.
All right, accept as a friendly amendment. Are there any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from District 33. Has an amendment. Senator, please give us the number of the amendment.
The amendment number is 483-524/1.
524. All right, 524. Give us one moment. All right, Senator, may I explain the amendment?
Thank you very much. On the sheet that's just been put on your computers, divided into two sections. Amendment 1 is changes to the purpose paragraph. Amendment 2 is the key, having to do with the funding of electric buses and alternative fuel buses. The bill currently talks about money coming out of the transportation fund, and it appears that it restricts funding to that fund. Maryland Department of Transportation encouraged us to be open to receiving funds from the federal government and other grants that may come our way. This bill just clarifies the funding source for buses in the future. Request a favorable report.
Senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yeah, Mr. President, as I understand it, it does two things. One, it removes language that we adopted in committee, giving some flexibility on alternative fuel. And then secondly, it takes out the spending from the Transportation Trust Fund for the buses to moving towards electric. The governor's already committed to doing 50% of the fleet. This bill calls for 100%. And the senator from Mid-Montgomery County on budget and tax actually has a bill that this encapsulates in it. For those reasons, if we want to move forward with electrifying the fleet, we think this is the right direction to go, so I would urge a red vote.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. Noes have it. The amendment is rejected. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have an amendment, but I first have a question for the floor leader, or the chairman, please.
Senator, at the moment we don't have anything before us, so we need an amendment in order to have a discussion.
Yes, sir. The amendment number is 783622-1.
622/1.
Yes, sir.
622. Okay. Give us 622. Okay. Senator May explain the amendment, and then we'll ask the floor leader to answer any
Yes, sir.
questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to follow the science. Yesterday, we heard the chairman and the sponsor about science. And we need to accept this amendment. It's a friendly amendment. It's an acceptable amendment. This amendment will set the greenhouse gas reduction amount to 50%. Prior to the bill, the goal was already an ambitious reduction level of 40%. However, the Maryland Commission on Climate Change, which the maker of the bill sat on and agreed with a 50% reduction level. They looked to the most widely acceptable science and guided them to their decision of 50% reduction. The 50% level is also within the Paris Accord agreement goals. Maryland is already in the nation leading in the lowest in its energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. According to the MCCC, we reduced our energy reduction carbon dioxide emissions by 37.6%. This was more than any other state in the nation. We are continuing to do more, which is why you should support this amendment of 50% reduction. This reduction amount is achievable and realistic goal that balances cost and ability. Mr. President, I urge the members to accept this friendly amendment and support the science. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator. Did the senator have a question for the floor leader? How about we have the floor leader respond to the amendment, and then if there are clarifying questions, we'll follow up after that.
Yes, sir. My question was only this, sir, was as he is and he's a part of the Maryland Climate Change Committee or Commission, which I already answered for him. So thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Senator, the chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I indeed did sit on the Climate Change Commission. The plan came from the Department of the Environment, and on the commission, the administration actually controls the majority of the seats. So that's a separate issue. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fundamental question. Do we want to raise the bar or keep the bar at a place that may or may not get us to where we need to be? You know, the administration is saying 50% reduction by 2040. Originally, they came in saying 40%. So even they were pushed to proceed forward, and that's before we see any national actions from the new administration, who are hopefully going to adopt actions that are actually going to move us more aggressively. And again, Mr. President, members of the Senate, a lot of the question here is the urgency. Do we feel an urgency or not? I have to tell you, in their plan that depends on a 50% reduction, there's no real expansion of MARC. There's no reimplementation of the red line. They add a few new apps for MARC, which maybe will save a few people, but there's very little mass transit expansion. There's more road building, and I think if we do this right, we can achieve 60%, and we have to push the envelope, or we're going to pay for it, or our children or grandchildren are going to pay for it. I would urge a red vote on the amendment, which severely weakens the bill.
All right. Any further discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from Hartford and Baltimore counties.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader yield for a couple questions on this?
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. So, sir, I'm trying to follow the line here. So I'm looking at the bill, and the bill came in, and it struck on page, I guess page 4, but anyway, line 28. The state shall reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions by 40. That's bracketed out, and it says 60 from 2006 level by 2030. So my question is, the 40%, that came from 2007's executive order, correct?
My understanding of the history, and I could be off a little bit, is there was the original Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. It called for a 25% reduction by 20... The original bill called for a 25% reduction by, I think, 2020 or 2025. But it included a fail-safe, a button, where the department had to come in 4 years later on those numbers, or else the bill would sunset. When we came back, actually the agency and a lot of the advocates said, that's not bold enough, because science told us we had to be bolder. So we renewed this bill and came in with 40% and up the 25% to 40%. So that's currently on the books. Even the administration has said, we've got to be bolder yet. So they are suggesting 50%, whereas this bill is suggesting 60%.
Okay, so 2007, we were at 25%. I think this was 2015, we passed this bill that took it to 40%. Or 2016, I think, was signed into law by Governor.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. So we bumped up to 40.
Correct.
And then
this bill is moving it to 60.
I understand. I'm just trying to make the creep to get to 60, because we went 25, 40, then the governor's Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction Act, his plan came in at 50. And I'm trying to figure out, you said, let's be bold, let's go to 60. Where is the science? Was it there at 50? What got us to 60? Other than, as you said, if we want to make change, let's go with it. Why 60? Why not 70?
I can't speak for every scientist.
Okay.
But what most of them say, and one of the best in our state is Don Bosch, who's nationally, internationally known and was president of UMSES. He's said a couple of things. One, the more we achieve early, the pressure on us later subsides to some degree. And, a lot of the scientists and the IPCC talk about a 1.5 degree change in centigrade gets to a point that we have to stay below that increase, because the melting of ice is going to have a radical effect on sea level rise, particularly in those countries and states that are threatened. And I think in the United States, Florida, Louisiana, and Maryland are among the top 3 or 4. So we want to stay, if we can, do our part in staying below that 1.5 degree Celsius increase. My understanding is achieving a 60% reduction by 2030, which some other states have already adopted, is the best way to go. And,
so there's no science behind that number other than
there's no
just
science
saying,
behind it. 50%. They set some models to justify the 50%. But part of that model included achieving some of this reduction by expanding our roads. Now, they found a consultant somewhere who would say that would reduce carbon dioxide because fewer cars would idle. We also know that when you build extra lanes, more cars come on it. And most scientists say that's nuts. There's no effort to build mass transit. There's no effort to start the Red Line back up again. There's no effort to have the mass transit from Charles County. There's really very little effort to have the MARC train go more frequently, or the Penn Line. So the plan and the weakness of the plan says to me that if we do this right, we can and should achieve an aggressive goal as we can, and that helps us get us to 60%.
okay, is there any fiscal numbers that we would know going from 10 or 50 to 60 what it's going to cost? Is there any metrics with it?
Well, the Department of the Environment has a whole staff to do modeling, and they have a budget. I don't have that, so I can't tell you an answer to that. But I do want to say, we included in this bill, as was done in 2009 or 7, that in 4 years, these numbers sunset. And if this legislature thinks it was too aggressive or not aggressive enough, we can look at it again. So it sunsets. And if we think we were pushing too far, we cannot renew it, we can bring it down to 55 or 52 or whatever percent. So we're not putting this in stone. We believe in the legislature, who's ever governor, if we're sitting in these seats or someone else is sitting in these seats, to look at the effort that's been made, the success that's been made, and any other international scientific data that can help us make better decisions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. President, on the bill, or on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Again, colleagues, we started at 25% reduction in 2006. In 2016, we took it to 40. The Governor's Commission got together. You had all these experts and panelists. Now, you might not like some of the people that were on it, but this was a consensus. They came up with 50. They thought it was the right number. And here we are. We have a bill that's been put in and say, hey, let's be bold. Let's go to 60. I would rather err on the side of caution of saying, hey, you know what? The governor had professionals that sat at a table. They looked at this stuff. It took them a couple years. They came up with a number that they think is more feasible for this state. And for that reason, I will be supporting the amendment, Mr. President.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from District 34.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader would yield for a question, please.
The floor leader yield. Pierce O, Senator may proceed.
Sure.
So, a couple of comments. Just try to make sure I understand what you're saying. It's been my understanding that these roads, we building these high occupancy lanes, that those would ultimately become the autonomous vehicle lanes that the electric autonomous vehicles could operate on and isolated from the rest of the traffic. So is there a problem with sort of being visionary and looking out and trying to anticipate where things are going? I recognize that trains are one option, but it just seems like in my time on the autonomous vehicle working group that it looks like a pretty good option for future mass transit. So isn't that something that they ought to be looking at?
Isn't that so, Senator? At some point we might get to autonomous vehicles in an expansive way. In the interim, there is a major move, and even General Motors and Ford have moved in the direction of electrifying the vehicles. And this bill, another section of the bill, calls for the state taking the lead in that. I have to tell you, I've looked at the plan, the governor's plan, the Department of the Environment's plan. Nowhere do I see an absolute commitment. They say, we'll look into it. So, those vehicles, followed by AI, are going to happen probably at some point. But even looking at the next horizon, there's no urgency to even do that. And I just think if those kind of roads are built, and this is not a road bill, there's some other bills floating around the legislature dealing with that road expansion, and it has a fair amount of opposition in some parts of the state. It's not going to get us to where we need to get. And this is a comprehensive bill. It deals with electrifying vehicles. We think saying that, the AI technology, I think, is a few years off. They want to break ground, and I think in the next 12 months on that, they're going to be gas-powered cars. We have 29,000 electric vehicles, although they're saying we're going to have 700,000 or 800,000 by 2030. I don't know how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So
well, I guess I just looked at what we were doing on the highways, anticipating that that's the tougher part to build out. The vehicles will come, but you got to have the infrastructure for them. So I thought that was a pretty good initiative by the administration to be looking at these alternative lanes. And as far as how far off the technology is, in JPR, this session alone in JPR, we've dealt with bills to allow those autonomous little delivery vehicles to go around using computers and navigating around. We just approved one of those, and we also did a bill for trucking, truck platoons on connected vehicles, and this body approved that as well. So it looks like we're moving along. I guess my second question to you, if I could, is I'm still trying to understand the 50 to 60%, because the 50%, as I understand it, was based upon a group that included experts through the administration in transportation and the environment and all aspects of the environment, and also other folks outside the administration who sat down and went through all this and came up with 50% as a reasonably achievable goal for the state based upon our resources and the technology. And then we jumped up to 60%, and the only thing I've heard to justify the 50 or 60% in your previous discussions with my colleague are that some expert who lives in Maryland said, hey, let's even be bolder and go for 60%. And so it just seems like if we're gonna make this drastic increase, that's a big percentage, 50 to 60%. If we're gonna do that we ought to weigh the information we're getting from these experts in transportation and the environment, et cetera, against one guy who said, hey, let's go to 60%. So maybe you could give me some level of comfort that we're going with this jump, and we're ignoring all the technical advice we're giving from all these people whose salaries we're paying, and saying, hey, but there's some other guy, and let's just go with him and go to 60.
Yeah, Senator, I think you're following the wrong methodology. I believe...
I'm just listening to testimony.
No, I believe the 50% wasn't pulled first and say, let's how to do it. I think the department said, this is what we're willing to do. We know we have to do a little bit better. These are the strategies we're willing to do. These are off the table. There were, I don't want to say dozens, but there were numbers of other proposals from minority members of the commission that were rejected. So the 50% number wasn't set and then we justify it. The 50% came after they decided what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. Okay. So for example, there's this process called transportation, I can't remember what the other initials stands for, climate initiative. They decided not to participate in that. There are numbers of things that have taken place, and some they've put in column A and some they've put in column B. So the 50% number is based on the urgency or the willingness to push the envelope. It didn't happen in the other direction.
So I've seen the write-up that the folks who backed the 50%, they were the administration's report saying, here's how we get to 50%. Where do I go to look? Where's the writing? Where's the detail, the folks who say, hey, we're going to go up by 10%, and here's all the scientific data to establish that. Here's the expertise. That's what I'm looking at. That would be the comfort here, not just sort of suggestions that there are people who don't like the 50 who would rather have 60. But did they write a separate report? Did they write a dissenting report that said, hey, here's why 50 is wrong and 60 is right?
Number of proposals have been made over the last 18 months to move the administration to take further actions in many areas. Many of them were rejected, some were adopted. So it's only, I think, what their report is lacking. I don't have the capability to come up with a scientific report that costs, I don't know how much money. But the question is, do you think they are acting in an urgent way or not? And when we came in 2009, and this legislature approved the first bill calling for 25% reduction, everyone came back later on and said it wasn't enough. Why? 6 of the hottest years on record happened in the last 7 years. So between 2014 and 2021, we've had the hottest years on record. We didn't know that in 2009. And they make projections of sea level rise, and they talk about a lower scenario, a middle scenario, and a higher scenario. And each week, each month, they are pushing the scenarios closer to the middle or to the high because things are happening around this globe so quickly. I mean, one major national magazine talked about climate mass migration. People are being forced to move. Our economy, whether it's Ocean City, Baltimore, Annapolis, is becoming more and more threatened. So the question is, do we feel an urgency or not?
Okay. I appreciate where you're coming from, but we've moved from, from 25% to 40% to 50%. It doesn't seem to me that that's showing a lack of interest here. And while I fully appreciate your commitment here and your sense of urgency, it doesn't seem to me that 50% versus 60% demonstrates an extreme level of apathy. Rather, what it demonstrates to me is that we've got an administration who's recognizing that there are very real impacts on our society, on our economy, on everything we do, and that we while we want to be aspirational, we also have to be realistic and reflect that Maryland's one little piece of this, and jumping way out ahead of the herd isn't really going to accomplish anything, and that we've got to move with the international norms, and the 50% is pretty darn good. And I'm just concerned when you talk about, just things like buses. We convert all of our buses to electric, and then we have a major power outage, and we have to evacuate our cities. And guess what? We don't have any power. We can't move people because we know that in Texas, in the big ice storm, it was the gas buses, the diesel buses that kept going and went around and picked people up so they didn't freeze to death. So the administration has to factor in things other than simply the international concerns over greenhouse gases. They have to also factor in every other aspect of our society. And so I think that we ought to be looking at these amendments and supporting them as a demonstration that we have some level of confidence that the administration and the scientists they brought in, the experts they brought in, have a substantial level of credibility, and that the outliers that want us to go to 60% really owe it to us to produce something more than suggestions that they don't like 50%. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from District 30.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this amendment for two reasons. Number one, I think the floor leader has done an extraordinary job of outlining the urgency of the moment. We're seeing flooding across the state and across the world. We're seeing wildfires that are unprecedented. We're seeing storms that are unprecedented across the nation. We've debated that on the floor this session. I think he's led on the urgency of the moment, and I think this bill matches that urgency. That's number one. Number two, we are partners in governing with the administration. And the floor leader has mentioned that the administration took 2 years over schedule to give us their own report and their own recommendations, while the bill sponsor, the floor leader, has worked diligently on this bill, crafting this bill, and they came in, frankly, at a very last minute with their own recommendations. I don't necessarily view that as partnership in governing here, and I think it's a very last minute recommendation. And so for that reason, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, I urge a red vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from District 35.
Thank you, Mr. President. Going back to the most recent election we had, national election, we heard a lot of talk about, now President Biden talked about getting back in the Paris Climate Agreement. So I think I just want to point out that also just yesterday in the Hill.com, a new report from the Environmental Defense Fund says the U.S. should set a target of reducing total net greenhouse gas emissions to at least 50% below 2005 levels by 2030 to be aligned with the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. So to me, 50 compared to 60 is not really that unreasonable. It looks like that's what a lot of environmental advocates are already asking for, and it looks like that's a direction at a national level that now President Biden will be going. So I guess if 60, maybe 6% might not be good enough of a target for some folks, but it looks to me, from all I've read, that that's where we're heading nationally. So why wouldn't we want Maryland to be in line, just a small state out of 50, why wouldn't we want to be in line with those goals nationally? So I think 50% is not an unreasonable number, and I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank everyone for saying a part of this amendment, because I think it's very important what we're doing. I want to commend the chair and the sponsor of this bill. I know he's worked hard. I know he's done many things for the good of our climate and what has been happening in our world and in our nation and in Maryland. But just to reiterate the last speaker, what he said, it says to achieve the Paris Accord Agreement most ambitious goals of keeping global warming below the 1.5 Celsius above the pre-industrial levels requires reducing global greenhouse gas emissions by 50% percent by 2023. And this is not coming from the administration. This is coming from WHO, from the World Organization, which our president joined. And I think we should support that. I think all of us. This is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. This is an issue for you and for me and for all of us. Let's get to a reachable goal and go at 50%. Thank you, and please support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, question is on the amendment. On the amendment, I think we want to do a roll call on this one. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 34.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment.
And the amendment number, Senator?
163426.
426, one moment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thanks, President. Colleagues, this relates to the methane provisions in the bill. Methane is 7% of the greenhouse gas emissions in this state. And the amendment addresses really three areas of the current bill. First, the bill, as it's written, uses practices that are inconsistent with national, international greenhouse gas measurement protocols that are including the Paris Agreement, by estimating methane's impact on the climate change over 20 years instead of 100 years. MDE's practice, consistent with the international norms, is to use the 100-year value and then supplement that with a 20-year value to understand the important near-term impacts of methane emissions. The second provision, the second part of the amendment, under current bill would require the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act plan to include specific estimates of the reductions expected from each GHG reduction measure, which is conceptually flawed because the interactions among the measures. The best practice now is to analyze the effects of multiple measures simultaneously with an economy-wide modeling framework. And finally, this amendment would remove the air sampling provision for methane. I think the amendment's important because unlike some other areas of greenhouse gas emissions, it's tough for us to avoid this one. Large pieces of greenhouse gas emissions, I mean, the easy part of that is tightening up on pipelines and stuff that leak methane. But the tougher part of the sewage treatment, the water treatment, and the like that are tough for us to make too much of a change in, because what's happening is happening. So I just ask for your support for this amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have found out in the last year and a half, that some of the measuring of methane escape from landfills has been uneven. And it's very dangerous. It's 50 times worse than carbon dioxide. In the last 2 years, through grants, the University of Maryland and other institutions have been flying across our state measuring methane in the atmosphere. And they found a major discrepancy. So what do we do in the bill? We say if there's a major discrepancy between what they find in the air, which is much more scientific, then they should investigate why there's a difference, reassess the methodology, and publicly disclose on the department's website why this is happening, and hopefully take steps to get them right. I mean, I can't understand when we're trying to do something in a reasonable fashion, we want to remove that language. Essentially, adopting this amendment says, we don't care if the methane release is not being quantifiably captured. We don't know what it is. Even though we have data on a national grant with airplanes at our disposal, or the University of Maryland's disposal and MDE, if there's a major change, we want to put our head in the sand and not try to figure out why. The second item in this bill, in this amendment, which is why I urge a red vote, is it calls for a specific explanation as to what action will lead to what reduction. Accountability. The plan that the administration proffered included as one of their reductions the Governor's CARES Act, which is an environmental bill which didn't move last year, was stuck in rules this year, but yet that is considered one of the foundations for reducing greenhouse gas and getting to 50%. I think we need to quantify, have clear expectations. We need accountability and transparency, a word that's been used a lot. So I think this takes us backwards, and I would urge a red vote.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
I think that, the major provision in this amendment was the 20 versus 100 year, and I guess the fact that, we're not addressing that suggests that it's a good amendment. So I would encourage my colleagues to go green on this amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, no further discussion. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Opposed, nay. Noes have it. The Senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the Senator from Upper Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have Amendment 963728.
963728, one moment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yesterday in my comments, I had mentioned that the CEF fund is being targeted in this piece of legislation, as well as several other pieces of legislation this body is considering this year. I believe that actually the CEF fund was utilized in the Governor's Relief Act, that we pulled some money out of there over the next few fiscal years. And sometimes it's unfortunate that we have some of these very successful programs. We're seeing funds diverted from the Bay Restoration Fund to fund part of this. Program Open Space has always been rated to fund other priorities. And now, once again, we are targeting the CEF fund for priorities specific to this bill. I think it's important that we all maintain our commitment to CEF's primary goals, and that's funding energy conservation and energy efficiency programs for customers, as well as bill assistance for low-income electricity customers. So, Mr. Floor Leader, this amendment hopes to share on some of your optimism that there will be a larger influx of revenue into the CEF fund from the RGGI auctions. As we discussed again yesterday, the RGGI auctions have averaged $13 to $17 million quarterly, or about $52 to $68 million annually. And my colleague, the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, stole a little bit of my thunder yesterday when he mentioned that the latest RGGI auction produced $22 million, which would translate hopefully to about $88 million annually. So, Mr. President, this is a very simple amendment that just raises the amount of funds that must be received into the CEF account from $50 million to $80 million before they can be transferred to the Climate Solutions account. Mr. President, I ask the favorable green vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise to urge a red vote for this. This simple amendment would defund this legislation. We calculated that the Maryland Energy Administration has spent about $50 million. We said we don't want to cut into that and divert the money they're used to receiving for their projects. So we said anything over $50 million, but we capped it at $20 million. Now, the last auction of this RGGI, this Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, did come up higher, but there is absolutely no guarantee it's going to be over $80 million. So I think this should be read as an effort to defund this legislation and not move forward for the state of Maryland, so I would urge a red vote.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the...
Mr. President?
Any senators who wish to speak who have not yet spoken? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you. Just a quick question to the floor leader's response to that. Have we accounted every other piece of legislation that's out being considered by the General Assembly as far as which ones are taking money from the CEF account when we've analyzed whether or not this bill could be funded? I mean, not saying I want to try to make my amendment here, torpedo this entire bill, but are other bills out there that could possibly torpedo this as well?
Senator may answer the question.
I can't speak definitively. I don't think we've passed any bill that takes money from the CEF. I must say I had a conversation with the Secretary of the Environment a month ago, and at that point he was suggesting taking money from the CEF fund to pay for electrifying the buses. Now, I don't know if he's pursued that or not, but to my knowledge, I don't believe any money has been reappropriated from the CEF fund.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. That is not exactly the same information I'm hearing from the Maryland Energy Administration. Obviously, they're very concerned as they've seen a number of bills that have come through that target CEF funds to, in a sense, not be able to fulfill their obligations on these energy conservation programs and potentially even put them at danger of not being able to have the operating costs that MEA needs. So again, that's the reason why, Mr. President, that I am just trying to be a little bit more cautious in raising the amount, not trying to torpedo the bill, but again, if we can expect that Reggie Auctions will produce more funds for the CEF, then I think this amendment is worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, all in favor? The Senator's request a roll call. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If anyone wishes to explain their vote, change their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendments fail. Senators, we're kind of getting the same vote on all amendments. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. 203021/1.
203021. All right. Give us just a moment, Senator. Oh, it's up. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, in the bill right now, the way it's written, it says there's a clause that says may not include highway widening or additional road construction as a greenhouse gas emissions reduction. What this amendment does strikes that, and I come at it from the angle, and I heard what the chairman said. If you put another road, I think you can have a split debate of whether it increases greenhouse gases or doesn't. That more cars might get on the road because it's better. On the other hand, you don't have a parking lot, and you have vehicles moving a lot faster, which is a known fact that does help put less pollutants into the air than if they're sitting in a parking lot type of situation on some interstate somewhere in the state of Maryland. Mr. President, the older you get, sometimes you have senior moments. There was a bill several years back, and I can't remember what it was, maybe the chairman does, but it was an environmental bill that had to do with spending money on certain things in the environment. One of the clauses in there was they didn't want any more roads built. And I held the bill up and met with the environmentalists and got my colleagues on the committee to agree that, there's other issues related to either building a new road or widening an existing road, which deals with safety and economic development. Now, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I think you would agree with me that the few of us who come from the rural parts of the state, if we didn't get up and speak on issues that we see impacting us different than maybe some of you who don't live in the rural parts of the state see it differently, then I say shame on us. And hopefully you'll put up with some of our commentaries you did on the sewage treatment plant issues, where we have concerns that things might be pushed back. And if this bill passes with this language in here, there are a couple roads, particularly in my part of the state, that are in the process of looking at being built, number one, to interstate standards, or widening out, number two. If any of you are familiar with Interstate 81, which runs the gambit of Washington County, and my colleague back in the back here, I think will agree with this, sometimes it's like a parking lot. It's probably the most heavily used truck route in the state. And it's in the plans to add 1 lane on each side, which would make it 6 lanes, 3-way each way. In Garrett County and Allegheny County, we've been working for years and years and years to try to get a north-south interstate built type highway. In both of those cases, it would be for economic development and safety. So I think you need to have a little bit of an offset here, because I can assure you, I think as I look around, I've probably been in the legislature longer than anybody sitting in this room right now. And sometimes people interpret things a little different when they're written in the law, and they'll come back and say, well, this says we probably shouldn't build any roads or expand any roads because that doesn't help clean up the greenhouse gases. I'm sure the chairman's probably going to say, well, no, you can still do it, you just got to get it approved. But that puts more pressure on the administration or the Department of Transportation not to do those things, which again hurts the rural parts of the state. Now, I'm sure most of you wouldn't sit in here and vote for a bill because we don't have a whole lot of mass transit, to run a maglev train from Annapolis to Garrett County, utilizing the right-of-way of the interstates. Then we'd have some mass transit. You could live up there, work down here, and get home in time for supper. I'm not trying to make light of it, but we have to have some flexibility here. And if this stays in the way it's written, you'll have environmental groups in the future come back and say, the intent of this was we shouldn't expand any roads or we shouldn't build any new roads. Mr. President, this is very detrimental, as I see it, to rural parts of the state who need a little extra help for economic development. And let's just say, as the chairman commented, it puts more cars on the road, or that particular road. Well, that may be, but it might take those cars off another road, so it equals out. So I would ask you to look at this from that standpoint. I don't think it changes anything in the timing that we get to the 60% at all. I just think it says we have a little flexibility if we pass this amendment, and you won't have people in the future, as those parts of the state need roads. And I don't know if you can interpret in here, Mr. Chairman, if that means also building a road through an industrial park or a business park, if you're using state money. So the whole bill is important. I just ask that you give a little support to this amendment to help get a little more positive reflection on rural parts of the state. So I would ask you all to vote green on the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes, senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yeah, Mr. President, members of the Senate, let me just read so you can decide for yourselves. The bill says a final plan developed under this section may not include highway widening or additional road construction as a greenhouse gas emission reduction measure. It doesn't say you can't build roads. It doesn't say that it has to be looked at with a screen of the environment. It simply says, don't tell us that you're going to solve our environmental problem by building more roads. And in fact, I got an email just a few minutes ago that while highway widening was included in an initial draft of the administration's plan, they took it out of the last draft. I think they were embarrassed by it. Some areas need roads. Absolutely true. But don't start counting them. I mean, there was another part of the draft plan that says small modular nuclear reactors spread across the state, neighborhood nukes, if you will, would be used to count reductions. Well, we haven't done that, and I'm not sure when the state will adopt such a practice. I'm not sure anybody here is ready for a neighborhood nuke to come to their neighborhood. So this simply says, don't use these assumptions. I mean, they really aren't proven. They're fallacious, and it simply says, don't use it when you make these calculations. If you want to build roads, but don't use it as a justification for having a better environment. I urge a red vote.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Senator's request a roll call. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? All right, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Mr. President, I do have another amendment coming, and I just was going to ask if we could have just courtesy to lay it over for one more day. And it's taking a little time, and I know I'll get it tomorrow morning if that's possible, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Senator, the layover motion would be out of order at this time. I think we kind of know where the amendment will land.
Mr. President?
We can certainly take a vote, but I think we know where the vote may be on that special order. It's up to the senator. Do we want to vote on it? To the chairman?
Mr. President, I have over a quarter of a deck of cards in amendments. We've heard 6 or 7 of those. There are another 5. I'm not sure if people don't want to move them. This has been before us for a number of days. You know, I think if some of the other amendments want to be moved, you know, I think we had 6 or 8. There are another 5 out there. I think it's up to 14. I'm not sure at this late date we're going to have an amendment, given the conversation we've had for 3 or 4 days. So I would urge a red vote on the special order.
All right, question is on the special order. All in favor of the special order, say aye. Opposed, nay? Nays have it. Are there any further amendments to the bill or title? Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment. It's number 253629.
253629. 253629. All right, give us just one moment, Senator. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment is very brief. It provides that on or after October 1st of this year, a newly constructed public school facility built with Built to Learn Act money shall install and utilize rooftop solar panels. If I could speak briefly on my own amendment.
Senator, may proceed.
Thank you. Let's talk about the future of electrical generation in Maryland. We have 5 remaining coal-generating electrical plants. They're all scheduled to sunset and close down by the end of this decade. The Calvert Cliffs nuclear power facility is nearing the end of its useful life, so we face a future without nuclear-generated electricity. There's not enough sustained wind in Maryland to effectively satisfy our energy needs, or even a portion of them. So the future of Maryland is going to be in solar. From 2030 on, we're going to generate virtually all of our electricity through the use of solar. And the question there is, where do the solar panels get placed? Do they get placed on farmland, or do they get placed on roofs? The Built to Learn Act, which sprung back to life when we passed Kerwin a couple of weeks ago, is going to provide $2.2 billion for school construction within the next 10 years. Schools these days are not built with peaked roofs. They sprawl and they have flat roofs, perfect for solar panels. So my amendment would require that each of the schools built with Built to Learn Act money in which the construction starts after October 1st, have solar panels on their roofs. Now, there was a suggestion when the floor leader of the bill explained the bill that at least one school in each county would have solar panels on the roof. At least that's what I took from the suggestion. I hope I'm recalling what he said correctly. So I've looked at the bill carefully. On page 9 of the bill, at lines 20 to 24, it says, subject to the availability of funding from the Net Zero School Loan Fund, and I have no idea how much money is in the school loan fund, at least one of the schools constructed in each local school system from January 22 through June 30 inclusive shall be constructed to meet net zero energy requirements. So I took a look at the definition of net zero energy requirements to see if they require solar panels on the roofs of that one school per county. And the best I could do trying to find the definition of that was on page 29 of the bill at lines 15 to 18, where the bill says a net zero energy balance in accordance with standards or guidelines recommended by the Maryland Green Building Council and approved by the Secretaries of Budget and Management and General Services. Nothing in there about solar panels. So based on the language of the bill, I see no assurance that any of the schools to be built with Built to Learn Act money would have solar panels on its roof. All of those schools might be built without solar panels. So let me talk about solar panels on roofs. The old paradigm that we've all lived with for 25 years about solar panels is that you spend a lot of money up front to buy the solar panels and install them on the roof. And then as time goes by, you have lower electrical costs. And gradually, when you add up all the savings on the electrical costs over the years, after 10 or 12 years, you've actually recaptured the money that you spent up front to install the solar panels. We all know that paradigm. That's the paradigm we've lived with. But that paradigm, you can take that paradigm and smash it over your knee because it no longer is the case. How can I say that? The Maryland State Fairgrounds this past summer received a call from a solar company, and they said, could we install solar panels on the roof of the Cow Palace at the fairgrounds? And Gary Brewster, who runs the fair, said, how much is it going to cost me? And the response was, it's not going to cost you anything. We will install the solar panels for free. And to boot, you're going to receive lower electrical costs for the next 15 years to the tune of $1.1 million. Gary Brewster said, what's the catch? And the answer is, there was no catch. The industry has moved so far that the old paradigm that we're familiar with is no longer operative. Solar companies are out there, not just the one that approached the fairgrounds, but many others as well, that are willing to install solar panels on large flat roofs for no money up front at all, for free. And to boot, the organization that owns the building on which the solar panels are installed will get lower electrical rates for the out years and have savings. So the floor leader is going to tell you, well, that's just one model. There are other models, and of course there are. My amendment is agnostic as to which model the school systems should select. They could, to be sure, decide to pay money up front for the solar panels and received a much greater deduction on the electrical expenses on the out years. Or they could do, as the fairgrounds did, and get the solar panels for free and have electrical savings all the way through the out years, totaling, in the case of the fairgrounds, $1.1 million over 15 years, which is a little less than $100,000 a year. So there is no cookie-cutter design or no cookie-cutter model here. The various school systems can choose whichever model they want. But there is that model that was exemplified by the fairgrounds this past summer, that the solar panels can be installed for free. So here we are. We're at a juncture. We're going to start spending $2.2 billion on new schools. in the next 10 years. The question is, do we go down the right road or the wrong road? I submit to you that the wrong road is covering acre after acre of Maryland's farmland into industrial land, covered by steel and silicone panels. I submit to you that the right road is to install solar panels on the roofs. And instead of being passive, a passive bystander to what happens, because the state will be spending $2.2 billion, the state should lead from example. We should require that each of these new schools install solar panels on their roof. And that's what this amendment provides. I urge a green vote on the amendment. Thank you.
All right, Senators, move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate, and I appreciate the sentiment from the senator. However, it actually is very prescriptive and is forcing all 24 jurisdictions, the counties and school systems down one path. And I think we want to be more flexible. What the bill says is at least one must be net energy zero, at least one, and the other four must be solar ready. And we set up a bank with $6 million if a small local school system doesn't have the upfront money to make it net zero. And that net zero could be geothermal, it could be solar, it could be energy efficiency, and I hope they use solar, Senator. But this says they must use solar. And the architects actually were the ones who came to us and said, you should be less prescriptive because there are other ways to be efficient, to utilize clean energy. So they said use a broader definition, which is what we did. What your bill would do is force every jurisdiction, Dorchester, Cecil, Allegheny, Carroll, to build 5 with solar immediately. And then they have 2 choices. If they want to save the most amount of money, they're going to have to borrow money to pay the difference. And then once those solar panels are paid for, they're going to make a heck of a lot of money. But many will be forced to follow the model of that one company you keep coming back to. And that's a company that says, look, we're going to put them up, we're going to own them, and we'll give you a discount. But in fact, over 10 or 20 or 30 years, those school systems, those county, will probably get a smaller return on investment. So by requiring and adopting this amendment, you are tying the hands of your school system in your counties to pursue one direction, which in the long run might save them less money. 414 does not exclude building all of them solar, and I hope they do. But we want to give the local school systems, the local counties, a little flexibility. And in many cases, like in Baltimore City and Howard County, they have used solar. But some are looking at geothermal, which I was not familiar with numbers of years ago, but is very efficient and very effective. So for these reasons, I think we want to be less prescriptive, Senator. While I'm sympathetic to it, I don't think we want to force one model on all of the counties and school systems. So I would urge a red vote.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for the sponsor of the amendment. So yesterday, actually, to the chairman's point, we actually had a bill hearing on geothermal just yesterday in the Senate Finance Committee, a piece of legislation that I brought that would put some geothermal into our RPS in a somewhat different way. And I will say that sponsor did talk to me about this amendment, and I do say that it does have appeal, but as a result directly of the hearing yesterday, we had proponents come in, and what did they say about the future of geothermal, specifically directed to schools? And they made the case, and this goes to the model and not being too prescriptive. If you sat through yesterday's Finance Committee hearing, we came away absolutely thinking the geothermal is very much in play in competition with solar. And so while I definitely think there's merit to this amendment, as a result of the hearing yesterday, I come away thinking we don't want to be prescriptive. I think geothermal holds some potential in this space for our school system and that $2.2 billion. So, Mr. President, for that reason, I'm going to go red on this, but I do appreciate the amendment. I think it's well thought through to a point.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from District 21.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise in support of the amendment. I voted against the other amendments that were offered by our friends across the aisle because almost without exception, they would have weakened our progress on climate change. This is the reverse. This will help make more progress on climate change. Now, I absolutely, as we all do, defer to the chairman of the committee in terms of his deep knowledge and deep commitment on all of these environmental issues. I mean, it's his life's work. And many of the points he made I agree with. I agree that solar is not the only option. I agree with my friend from Montgomery County that geothermal, in fact, I have a geothermal school in my district. In Vansville Elementary School was built with geothermal. I've been promoting geothermal before it was cool. Insulation is important. But the strategy should be all of the above. It's not either or. This amendment, in fact, does provide flexibility for the school systems to try to figure out, do they want to put their own money up front and get more savings? And I agree with the chairman, that's entirely an option. Or do they say, we don't want to put more money up front, we want savings, but we don't want to put the money up front. This amendment allows that flexibility. It also doesn't say they can't do net zero. It doesn't say they can't do geothermal. It doesn't say they can't do insulation. But as some of my colleagues know, I've spent a good bit of time over the past 5 or 6 years on school construction issues. I've spent a lot of time with people who build buildings in school districts, with the Stadium Authority, with others. And I'm just here to say, from my own experience, the folks who design school buildings across the country, it's not just in Maryland, they don't think a whole lot about climate change. They don't think a whole lot about innovative ways to save money. Because they're used to just coming to the county, coming to the state, and say, give us money for a building. And they tend to design buildings the way they did 50 years ago. That's why over the years we've pushed them to be more innovative. This amendment does that. Is it a panacea? No. Could it be fixed and made a broader in a conference committee after the bill comes back from the House? It certainly could be. But I think because this amendment strengthens the bill, moves us closer to fighting climate change, I strongly support the amendment.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Noes have it. The senator's amendment fails. Senators requested a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 414 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Senators, we special ordered yesterday the other bill to immediately follow this one because we recessed, so we're going to just pull that bill up, which is Senate Bill 119, unless there are any objections. We were trying to... All right. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 119, Senator Gazzoni, Clean Water Commerce Act of 2021. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right. Question is on the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 119 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, we have the next on the layover calendar. If we could have the clerk read the next bill.
Senate Bill 374, Senator Kagan, Campaign Finance, Special Session of the General Assembly, Contributions Prohibited. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, 2 questions on the 2 committee amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 374 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Let's do, we've got a special order calendar. Oh, no, that was a special order. Let's do the We have a floor report for budget and taxation. Second readers. Start with calendar number 9. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 563, Senator Griffith, Local Health Departments Funding.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. Senate Bill 563 really is born out of changes that we made to the Health Department budget back with the Great Recession. Back around 2008, the state was grappling, as was the rest of the country, with the Great Recession. And so in order to take care of immediate needs, we reduced the local health department core funding formula. Senate Bill 563 will establish a new base level of funding at the state for core public health services. It will not require additional resources from the state until fiscal 23. And then recalculates each year after that. Basically, there is no fiscal impact in 21 and 22. It also creates some additional uses that the health departments can do with the funds that they receive from the state. And in addition, it requires that they conduct an evaluation and an assessment report. There are no committee amendments. The bill passed unanimously. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Question on the report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title?
Mr. President.
Yes. Chair recognizes Senator from District 5.
Could I ask the floor leader a question on this bill?
Senator, we just adopted the favorable reports. We have nothing before us. Does Senator want to, is it for the purpose of an amendment or?
Well, possibly, but I don't have an amendment with me, so.
So there's nothing before the body.
Could I have Mr. President, I'd like to have a special order for a day because I'm looking at this bill and the fiscal note is pretty large in the out years, and I understood the explanation, of why we're changing it, but it's somewhat far-reaching, and there's been a lot of questions about health departments in this past year.
On the special orders, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
I don't have a problem with the special order.
Just for a day, Mr. President.
All right, without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 622, Senator Edwards, income tax subtraction modification, donations to diaper banks and other charitable entities, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Budget and Tax as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm actually not the floor leader, but I do need to rise to special order this bill. This is in conjunction with the fact that as we're looking at some of the conditions and restrictions associated with the money we will be receiving in the stimulus package from the federal government, there are a couple of bills that may theoretically be impacted. And so, Mr. President, if I could special order this to the appropriate time next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Any objections? Any objections? Without objections, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 656, Senator Salling, Maryland Veterans Trust Fund, CAM for Veterans Grant Program established, David Perez Military Heroes Act, N 22 a day, favorable.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 656 established the CAM for Veterans, which is a complementary and alternative medical treatment, a program to provide grants to veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, and alternative medical treatments. The Maryland Veterans Trust within the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs must administrate the program and expend money for the Maryland Veterans Trust Fund to provide grants for the program. There are special funds here for this program. There's no amendments. I move forward to the committee report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 656 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 720, Senator Zucker, Education Maryland School for the Blind Pay Plan, favorable.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 720 is pertaining to the School of the Blind. As you all know, the Maryland School for the Blind was created in the mid-1800s, and since its inception, those that they serve, the population has changed. They've become more medically fragile. Often the Maryland School for the Blind has been compared to the Maryland School for the Deaf. Their base formulas are very similar, but the per pupil spending and allocation for the Maryland School for the Blind has been less than the Maryland School for the Deaf. So what this bill does is it requires the Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management to come up with a salary pay plan for the personnel in the Maryland School for the Blind that would be comparable to Baltimore County schools. And then and it's going to work in consultation with the Board of Directors of the Maryland School for the Blind. And then after the Secretary of the Budget and Management gets the recommendations, he would then make those recommendations to the governor on whether the governor will or will not include that in future budgets. There is no opposition. There's no committee amendments, and I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 720 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 769, Senator Hester, income tax credit for venison donation, alterations, extension, and testing for chronic wasting disease. Favorable.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Based on the information I provided earlier, I would ask that we special order this bill until the appropriate time next Thursday.
Are there any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 777, Senator Elrith, Public Health, Maryland Prenatal and Infant Care Grant Program Fund. Favorable with 2 amendments.
Read the jackpot bill this year. Chair recognizes the bill sponsors the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, Maryland is exceptional in a lot of ways. We are one of the wealthiest states in the nation. We have exceptional healthcare providers, world-class hospitals, and yet we have an unacceptably high rate of infant and maternal mortality. This rate sets us 22nd amongst other states in maternal mortality. We all know that black women are 3.7 times more likely to die because of childbirth than white women. Infant mortality is not much better. We rank 35th and 39th among states. And a lot of this has to do with lack of access to prenatal care. Approximately 7.3% of women who give birth in this state have had late or no prenatal care. They are showing up to delivery rooms without having had a single doctor's visit. What we have before us, Senate Bill 777, is the recommendation of two work groups. First of all, the Task Force on Maternal and Child Health delivered a powerful report to us in August with 9 strong policy recommendations to approach this devastating problem. The Senate President's Work Group on Equity and Inclusion took up this report, and what we have before us, 777, is a direct response to this. The evidence is clear. Early investments in prenatal care ensure safe pregnancies and healthier children. It's not just morally the right thing to do, ethically the right thing to do. It also saves the state money, that would otherwise be spent on high-risk maternity care, long infant neonatal intensive care unit stays, and emergency department visits in early childhood. That's why Senate Bill 777 creates early and meaningful investments in prenatal care for mothers who might not otherwise have access. So the bill renames the Maryland Prenatal and Infant Care Coordination Services Grant Program Fund as the Maryland Prenatal and Infant Care Grant Program Fund, and expands the fund's purpose to include awarding grants to federally qualified health centers, hospitals, and providers of prenatal care. The bill increases the amount of funding the governor must provide for the fund in the annual budget from $100,000 to $1.1 million in fiscal 23, $2.1 million in fiscal 24, and $3.1 million in fiscal 25. The additional funding must be used for grants to FQHCs, hospitals, and providers of prenatal care. Beginning in calendar 23, the Secretary of Health must submit an annual report on grant distributions and their impacts. There are 2 committee amendments, Mr. President. The first makes technical changes to the title. Amendment number 2 makes clarifying changes to the definition of provider of prenatal care, authorizes grants to be used for behavioral and oral health services that are necessary for maintaining healthy pregnancies, adds low birth weight to priority funding, requires the Secretary of Health to coordinate with the Maternal and Child Health Bureau in MDH when making grant awards, clarifies the Secretary of Health may require matching funds for in-kind contributions, and requires the Secretary of Health to ensure grants are used to improve health outcomes of pregnant women, collecting data to determine successful grant expansion. Mr. President, I move adoption of the 2 amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the senator from District 34 on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just if the floor leader would yield for a quick question.
Of course.
Senator may proceed.
So, I'm in light of all the issues we have with equitable distribution of medical care and the like right now, and I see that under the original law that we're amending, that the distributions were to the counties, which I guess would then make it pretty easy to make sure that people are getting their fair share. But now this shifts that to where the state's providing funds directly to these qualified health centers. So how do under this bill, how do we make sure that the distributions are being equitably distributed throughout the state?
Thank you for the question. The current program gives grants to county health departments. The bill would change the program to expand that to beyond just to counties, but to federally qualified health centers and hospitals and other providers of prenatal care. And we want to target this to the communities that frankly need it the most, and those are across the state in various communities. Mine, Baltimore City, the Eastern Shore, Prince George's, Montgomery County. And we try to put in some direction of targeting this funding to communities that have high rates of women on Medicaid, low birth weights for those babies. We tried to target this money to the communities that it would make the greatest impact. So I think equity is built into the bill from the beginning.
So the determination is made by the state health department? Is that who controls, who says who gets the priorities?
Yes, the secretary.
The counties don't have a say to come in and say, wait, give me that's not my fair share.
Well, the counties are free to apply for the grant. And
for their own, but these health institutions could just pursue their own grants independent of the counties, though, right?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry, I'll try. But I got it that the counties can apply for the grants, but it looks like the federally qualified institutions can pursue the grants independent of the counties.
Yes.
Okay, so the counties wouldn't have any ability then to say, wait, those applications are taking my fair share away. That would just be up to the health department to say, well, you got we've decided what your fair share is, and you're going to live with that.
Well, it's a competitive process. I would like to fund every county health department and every FQHC and every hospital for this program. We'll see how the data bears out in the reporting, but this is a competitive grant process that will be determined by the Secretary of the Department of Health.
Thank you.
All right, on the amendments, any discussion? Oh, yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the Middle Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much. Would the floor leader yield for a question?
Of course.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Do our health departments all provide grants now? I don't think they do.
They don't. Only 2 counties have so far benefited from the current grant program. It's only been in existence since fiscal 2019.
Correct. And on the Eastern Shore, what has happened over the years, because of the decrease in funding to our health departments, I believe, that the health departments are not always providing direct services. So they depend on the federally qualified health centers to provide those services. Is that correct?
Yes. Every community is going to have a different approach to this, and I think that's what's so great about this bill is it's going to allow for a variety of providers here to work independently or in conjunction with each other to provide this critical care.
And isn't it correct that in our jurisdictions we have local LHECs, which are local health planning organizations or local coordinating organizations, and aren't the health departments partnering with our federally qualified health centers and our hospitals and other entities to provide these services?
To my knowledge, in many cases, yes. I just spoke to the head of our hospital here at Anne Arundel the other day, and she told me she speaks to her health officer more often than she speaks to her husband, and I think that's the nature of the relationships between these providers.
Thank you. And I think that might help clarify some of the questions on this, because it is hard to understand as our communities work together to provide services to our women. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's one of the reasons why it's really important that we have these additional monies, because many of our women are falling in the cracks with access to prenatal care, and that's the whole issue. When a pregnant mom shows up either with premature birth or in our emergency rooms, then that care comes out of our uncompensated care fund. And we have a greater opportunity for that infant not to have the best chance to thrive and survive and be a healthy baby and a healthy mom. And if there's one thing I've learned in my psych nursing, is the best thing we can do for our pregnant moms is to make sure we provide the very best of care for them all the way up to their delivery, and then for a period of time after that, because we want to make sure that all of our children have a great opportunity to thrive and survive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendments, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 777 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 778, Senator Elfreth, Regional Institution Strategic Enterprise Zone Program alterations, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, for the same reason, I ask we special order this till Thursday at the appropriate time.
Are there any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, Senators, we're going to call it there. We're just hitting our 2-hour mark now. So a couple of notes before we do, well, let's do committee announcements before we get into some closing thoughts. Chair recognizes the Chair of Finance.
Finance will have bill hearings starting at 1:15, and we will vote following the hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, Education, Health, and Environment will start bill hearings at 1:30, followed by a voting session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair recognizes the Chair of Budget and Taxation.
Nothing scheduled.
All right. Chair recognizes the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet at 1:15 for voting for bill hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. Other committee announcements, delegations. Any other? Chair recognizes the Chair of Protocol Committee.
Thank you very much. Permission to use the senator's name.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have another birthday today. So Senator Augustine is celebrating his birthday today. Please welcome. Give him a round of
exactly
applause.
where he wants to be on his birthday, right? Right in that pod, right? No, we celebrate your birthday, Senator. All right, any other announcements before we shut down? Just one quick important administrative note, and I've had a number of conversations with the chairs. Just looking at the calendar, we're 34 days left. Everything is more complicated this year. There are a lot of bills in committee. Been saying it, we'll keep saying it over and over. The chairs are doing the best that they can to get bills moving and heard, but there are going to be a lot of good bills this year that are very thoughtful, very good, that may not make it through. This is going to be a very hard year, and there's going to, it's just very difficult to operate. So, we're going to try to prioritize the best we can. When we have days like this, we have a lot of work backed up behind where we are. I think we've got about 6 more calendars at least of second readers. So any one of these could take us at least, a couple hours. And so I want to make sure that everyone sort of knows that, one, this is going to be a hard year, particularly as we come up to crossover. The second thing is, just because a bill has not been moved is not because the chair is holding it back or trying to kill it per se. It is just there is a lot of work, and it is very, very administratively difficult to get things going. So please just know this is going to be a very different year as it has been from the start. All right, any other thoughts or comments before we adjourn to get to committee work? All right, let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Thursday, March 11th at 10:30 a.m. in memory of Robert L. Ehrlich, Sr.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay safe, wear your mask, get that vaccine.